Hey everyone, welcome to another $1,000 strap search. I've got my $1,000 in singles here and I'm about to show you what I found. But before I do, let's talk about this week's tip. I'm just going to slide these out of the way here a little bit so that I can bring out one of these. Now, I'm sure you guys are familiar with these. These are just the plastic holders that I put my currency in. Now, there are times when it's extremely difficult to get your currency into one of these sleeves. And the worst thing that can happen is you find a great note, and when you go to put it into a protective covering, you damage it. That just defeats the whole purpose. So, one of the things that I'm going to show you is one of the ways that may help you out a little bit. Now, I experimented on this one a little bit, and you can see it's got a lot of fingerprints and stuff on it because of what I used. Now, the main problem with these is that when you've got two pieces of plastic like that right next to each other, they develop a lot of static electricity. So, what you can do to alleviate that static electricity is use a dryer sheet. Make sure to use an unscented dryer sheet. That way you can remove the static from here, which will allow the two ends to come apart much more easily. Now, when you do it, you want to make sure you do inside and out. That way you remove all the static on this, and if you crumple it, that's fine. That's, you're just simply trying to remove the static, get as far into each corner as you can. And like I said, make sure you're using an unscented dryer sheet, otherwise you're going to get this residue all over. And you don't necessarily want that. Yes, your bills will smell much better, and yes, your bills are made of cloth. However, I don't know that anyone has ever done a long-term effect study on a dryer sheet versus currency. So yeah, use unscented. Another thing is this particular one, you'll notice, does have a little bit of a bow to it. Well, if I bend it the other direction, now I'm going to be able to separate this a lot easier. Just by bending it, you can see it starting to bow right over here. So now I can get my finger in there to get this thing open. So yeah, that's one thing you can do to make it a little bit easier to get in there. And then of course, when you're putting your note in there, I always slide it in with my fingers just to make sure that I am not shoving the note in, but I am guiding the note in. So I start with one corner here, and then I can carefully lay the note in to make sure that I'm using the maximum amount of the holder that's going there. And by tucking my finger in on each side, I can guide the note down into place. And because I removed all the static on there, it does slide pretty good. And there you have it. All right, that's this week's tip. And I hope that helps some of you guys out. All right, so there's my 1,000 in singles. What did I find this week? Well, you saw the first one. This is a Where's George note right there. It says Where's George on it. Yes, it did get wet. The ink did smear. Please help track this dollar something. www.where'sgeorge.com. So yeah, I found another one. So I will be tracking this one shortly. Whenever you find one, it's just neat because you never know where it's been. That's the whole point. And the thing is, if someone writes this on a bunch of notes, if those notes get back to the Federal Reserve, they trash them. So you don't really get a lot of opportunity to see where these notes have been. That's why it's kind of, I don't want to say important, but that's why it's a big deal to log them, so that if you do find one, the owner can at least see one or two. It's very rare that you're ever going to get 3 or 4 hits on an individual note. Anyway, that's my Where's George note. I will be logging that one. What else did I find? Found a bunch of trinaries, 3s, 4s, and 5s on this one. 6s, 8s, and 9s here. Now, I know trinaries and quads aren't worth anything. Like I said many times, what I'm doing is I save them because I'm trying to find 2 notes with 2 different serial numbers. And when you think of the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of notes that I've gone through and have still yet to find serial numbers that are identical, you understand the process I'm going through. So by saving my trinaries and by saving quads, that narrows my field to, instead of 1 in 96 million, down to about 1 in about 250,000. All right, another trinary, 2s, 4s, and 7s here. This one's 0s, 1s, and 4s. It's got a counter stamp on it. That's not an error. Let's see, 4s, 6s, and 9s. And I got some stars. 2017 star note, starting with a 0. We'll check that one out. Another 2017, not quite as nice. 2013, starting with a 0. Now, just because it starts with a 0 doesn't make it rare, and just because it doesn't start with a 0 doesn't mean that it's not rare. It just so happens that more of the rares are in the first printing that are done, but not necessarily all of them. So make sure to check all of your notes regardless of the number. That one's a little worn in the center. That one's got some writing on it. Another 2013 here, so I did pretty good with my star notes, that's for sure. Got quite a few of them this particular time. That one's crisp. This one is not. But this one's from 2009. 2009? Nope, 2006. 2006 star note. Okay, so we'll give that one a pass as far as condition. Older notes, I did find a 1999. This one's a little weak. 1995. Remember, 1995, 1993, and 1988A. You're looking over here for web notes. That's a 95, not a web note. Another 95, not a web note. A web note's just going to have one little lonely digit here. They're not going to have all these other numbers like that. And the oldest note in the group, a 1993. Now, this one isn't in the greatest of conditions, but they didn't make that many of them. That's the thing with 1993. They made 1988, and then halfway through that run, they changed it to 1988A. So that happened sometime between 1988 and 1993. Then when they put out the 1993s, the next note that came out was 1995. So yeah, there was just not a whole lot of time for 1993s. So these are not very easy to find. So yeah, even in rough condition, you're going to want to think about saving it just because they aren't there. It's like collecting 2009 pennies. There aren't very many there, even though they aren't really worth that much. All right. So what do I have for you this week from my safety deposit box? Well, I pulled out this one. I just got another graded note. This is an 1891 Treasury Note. $1 Treasury Note. This one features Edwin Stanton. He was the Secretary of War under President Lincoln during the Civil War. Edwin Stanton on the $1 Treasury Note. Now, you'll see that it's got a star here. All of them had stars. So this is not a special note because it is not a replacement note. They all had stars. So take a breath. Okay, but this one is a Treasury Note. It's not a silver certificate. It's not a gold certificate. It is a Treasury Note. The difference is silver certificates were backed by silver, gold certificates were backed by gold, and Treasury notes were backed by precious metals. They weren't required to pay out silver or gold. They weren't designated as silver or gold, but they were backed by precious metals. So the Treasury could determine how they would be paid out, whether it was silver and gold. It didn't really affect people because this was still $1. They could still go to the bank and get a silver dollar, or if they had 20 of these, they could go to the bank and get a $20 gold piece. It simply had to do with the redemption of the dollar through the Federal Reserve. So that is the designation of a Treasury note. It is simply not gold certificate. It is not a silver certificate. It is in coin. Okay, so if we take a quick peek, it says the United States of America will pay to the bearer $1 in coin, period. Not in silver, not in gold, in coin. So that is the 1891 Treasury Note. Let's take a look at the back. Now, they made these in 1890 and in 1891. The 1890 is the rarer note, and it has almost a solid green back. The back on that is just very intense and very intricate. Then in 1891, they changed the back to this design here. Now, it seems that the trend is going towards showing more white on the back. I guess that's so that you can look and make sure that the paper is legitimate, because on all notes you can see the blue and red fibers if you look close enough. So I think that's why they ended up going toward a design where you can see so much more of the paper itself, to help people identify that it's not a counterfeit note. To me, I would think that it's much harder to do the intricate work in the printing as was done in the 1890. But this one here, the 1891, like I said, they went with a lot less ink on the back so that you could see that there. This one does say minor rust. It's interesting that it says minor rust because it actually has a hole. When I bought it, I thought that was just like it said, minor rust. I didn't realize it was rusted through. Anyway, the note was graded by PMG, so it's hard to argue with the condition. It says 15, so that's what I have to assume it is. Choice fine. And let's take a look at the book, see what the book has to say about this particular note. Flip this over. There we go. $1 note. You can see on the top, Treasury or coin notes. Let's see. These notes were issued as a result of the Legal Tender Act of July 14th, 1890. The act authorized the Secretary of the Treasury to issue these notes in payment for silver bullion purchased by the Treasury Department. The entire issue of these notes thus became backed by metallic reserves. The notes were redeemable in actual coin, but whether silver or gold coin should be paid out was left to the discretion of the Secretary of the Treasury. So that is the 1890. The front of the 1890 and the 1891 are the same. You can see the back of the 1890, very dark, very detailed, very ornate. And when then you look at the 1891, a lot less ornate, a lot more of the back showing there. And that also reflects in the price. The 1891 starts out at $165, goes up to $225 once it hits 12, $375 at 20. Mine's a 15, so you're probably talking $250 to $275 on that particular note. But on the 1890, you can see the price is about double that because there was a lot less of them with that intricate design on the back. So that is the 1890 and the 1891 $1 Treasury note. All right, guys, if you learned anything new this week, go ahead and hit that like button. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please subscribe. I also love reading all your comments. Don't forget to share this with your friends and let them know they've got a place that they can check out some currency. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you again next week.